Hi, I'm Jarrad Brown, Australian expat financial planner based here in Singapore, and welcome to my video series where we tackle some of the tough personal finance topics for Aussies all over the world. Today I'm here to share with you some tips when it comes to guardianship for your children, particularly relevant for those Australian families living and working in Singapore. Now there are two types of guardianship. We have temporary guardianship and we have permanent guardianship, and today I'm going to walk you through exactly what they both are and how you can ensure that your children will be looked after in the event that something happens to you. So let's dive right in. First of all, temporary guardianship. Now, as the name suggests, a temporary guardian is there to look after your child or your children in the event that something happens to yourself or in some cases to both parents at the same time, and they would look after the children while waiting on the permanent guardians to arrive. Now, the reason this is important for so many of us as Australian expats is in many cases the permanent guardians are family or friends living back in Australia. So we need someone to look after the kids while we wait on those permanent guardians to arrive. Now, a temporary guardianship is something you can have as a separate document. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a will or lodged formally, but make sure that it's documented correctly. Make sure that you've let the guardian know. Don't choose anyone whose employment would lapse or cease in the event that something happens to yourself. So by this I mean people like your helper, for example. If you have domestic help living with you, they're not going to be in a position to look after your children in the event that something happens to yourself. So think through someone that you trust that can look after the kids. And of course, make sure that you review this on a regular basis. The transient nature of expat life may mean that the temporary guardians you put in place are no longer actually living in Singapore. So it sounds like an obvious one, but can often be overlooked. So just do make sure that these documents are up to date. The second item is the permanent guardian. Now these are the ones that would look after your child or your children forevermore and bring them up in the event that something happens to yourself or both parents in some cases. Now it's important here that they have ID documents for the children because they'll need to bring them to Singapore or wherever the kids may be based, and they'll need to ensure that they have copies of all required documentation to actually take guardianship of those children. The courts in Singapore will approve any guardianship, so it's very important to make sure that you consider who is going to be those permanent guardians and make sure they have the right documentation. Now, in terms of how you put this in place, it can be done as a standalone document or written into your will. So again, given the important nature of this one, I would certainly recommend that you seek professional legal advice. Don't just download a guardianship from the internet. This is something you're probably going to want to pay for, assuming that you love your children and want what's best for them, but certainly not something to look to save a few dollars on. So make sure you seek proper advice. I hope this shed some light on guardianship, a short one, but hopefully a helpful one for anyone with children. If you have any questions at all, drop a note to me in the comments, reach out to me online. Happy to have a chat. And if you have any questions or topics for our future videos, let me know. Thank you very much for tuning in and see you next time.